Picture this. A huge, destructive wave tears through a Boston neighborhood back in 1919. But here's the crazy part. This wave wasn't water. It was molasses. Yeah, you heard that right. We're diving into the story of one of the absolutely strangest and deadliest disasters in American history.
So let's set the scene. It's January 15th, 1919, in Boston's North End. And it's weirdly warm for a winter day. All of a sudden, the ground starts to shake, and then you hear it. The sound like a machine gun firing, followed by a massive, thunderous roar. That's it. That's how it began. No warning, just boom.
Which brings us to the big question, right? How on earth could molasses become a deadly weapon? I mean, it's just a sweetener. How does it turn into a force of nature that kills 21 people and completely destroys a neighborhood? Well, the answer, it's a pretty shocking story of corporate greed, some seriously bad physics, and a legal battle that would change everything.
Okay, first up, the ticking time bomb. Because to really get what happened here, you have to understand that this was no random accident. Oh no, this was a catastrophe just waiting to go off.
And here's the culprit. This absolutely enormous steel tank. We're talking 50 feet tall, that's 5 stories high, just looming over Boston's waterfront. It belonged to the United States Industrial Alcohol Company, and it was packed with just an insane amount of thick, goopy, heavy molasses. So you might be asking, why did they need that much molasses? Well, and this is where it gets interesting. It had nothing to do with baking cookies. This was all about the war effort. See, molasses was a key ingredient for making industrial alcohol, which was then used to make munitions for World War I. The demand was massive, which meant the company was rushing things.
And when you rush, you take shortcuts. Deadly ones, it turns out. I mean, this tank was a total disaster in the making. People who lived nearby said they could hear it groaning all the time. It leaked so much that local kids would literally bring pails to collect the sweet stuff dripping down the sides. And we now know the steel walls were way, way too thin to handle the pressure. And the company's response to all these red flags? They just ignored them. Every single one. So, with every single warning sign ignored, well, the inevitable finally happened. Let's get to the moment that ticking time bomb exploded, unleashing what you can only call a molasses tsunami. In a single catastrophic moment, the entire tank just rips apart. And 2.3 million gallons of raw, gooey molasses explodes into the streets. And this wasn't some slow leak, you guys. This was a wave, a colossal wave that reached about 25 feet high at its peak. It just towered over everything and everyone. And get this, it was moving at a terrifying 35 miles per hour. I mean, that's faster than any person could possibly run. It was a literal wall of destruction, and it was unstoppable. The chaos was just absolute. Buildings were lifted clean off their foundations. A firehouse nearby was completely flattened. The wave buckled the steel supports of an elevated train track. People, horses, carts, everything was just engulfed in this thick, sticky mess. And as the cold air hit it, the sludge started to harden, trapping everyone and everything inside. The human toll was just horrific. By the time it was all over, 21 people were dead, many of them suffocated, trapped in that viscous tide. And on top of that, more than 150 people were badly injured. We're talking broken bones, internal injuries, all caused by the sheer brutal force of that wave. You know, the actual flood was over in a matter of minutes, but the fight for what came next, that would last for years. This tragedy led to an absolutely groundbreaking legal battle. So the survivors and the victims' families, they all banded together. And they did something that was really unheard of at the time. They filed one of the very first class action lawsuits in the state against the company, basically saying, you did this and you're going to pay for it.
And this wasn't some quick, easy case. No, this was a 6-year marathon. There were huge investigations, tons of expert testimony, and of course, the company tried everything to get out of it. But in the end, the evidence against them, all that negligence, it was just overwhelming. Finally, in 1925, the court made its decision. The company was ordered to pay out almost $1 million. Now, that may not sound like a ton, but back then, that was a fortune. In today's money, we're talking over $15 million. It was a massive ruling, and it sent a very, very clear message. But the money was only part of the story. The real lasting legacy of the Great Molasses Flood is how it completely changed the rules so that hopefully something this horrible could never happen again.
Yeah, because of this one disaster, engineering standards across the country were totally revamped. The court case set this huge precedent that, yes, corporations are responsible for public safety. It led directly to things we just take for granted now, like stricter building codes and the rule that a professional engineer has to sign off on construction plans, all because of a river of molasses.
And the disaster left this other kind of spooky mark on the city. For decades after the flood. People in Boston's North End swore that on hot summer days, they could still smell a faint, sweet scent of molasses in the air. Like a ghost of the tragedy, just lingering. When you get right down to it, this whole bizarre story is a really powerful lesson, isn't it? It shows how even something as ordinary and sweet as molasses can become absolutely deadly when a company's greed comes before basic safety. And that really leaves us with one last thought. The warning signs about that tank were so obvious. It was groaning, it was leaking, but people in power just looked the other way until it was too late. So it kind of makes you wonder, right? What are the groaning tanks in our world today? What clear warning signs are we all ignoring right now?